I think one of the most frustrating things as an unheard entrepreneur is knowing that you're very skilled at something. You have a lot of knowledge in something, you're very good at what you do, and you can help people with it. And you want to help people with it. But anytime it comes to turning that into content, to messaging, to webinars, to ads, to copy, to emails, no one seems to be paying attention. You can deliver the most valuable piece of content. You can deliver gold to people and they don't understand or see why they need it. It just doesn't seem to land or resonate. It is one of the most frustrating things as an unheard entrepreneur. In today's episode, I'm going to interview a student of ours who had that exact problem coming into the program, and we're going to talk about how she was able to overcome it. This is an amazing episode that I loved doing. But fair warning, if you do have kids in the car, there is a cuss word that drops from time to time. Nothing major, but if your kids are in the car, you may want to play this episode later. So with that being said, I'm very excited for this episode, so I hope you enjoy it. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we have an amazing interview, which I'm really excited for because a lot of our episodes have been solo episodes and that gets boring after a while. So I'm really excited to bring an amazing interview to you guys today. And today, because New Generation Mastery is opening up soon, I thought it'd be really cool to start talking to some of our students about their experience in the program, but more specifically, what were their messaging challenges? Why were those challenges coming up? And how did they overcome those challenges so that you can learn from their experience? And today we have Navneet Mann, the creator of the Aligned Freedom Method. Welcome to the show. So sorry I screwed up the intro for you.
It's perfect. It really takes the edge off for me. So that works.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do here. We just flow and go with all of the mistakes and things like that. I remember we talked about our podcast before we got going, and Matt was like, I just really love it when people just go and it's just a normal conversation. And so that's what we do here. Takes the edge off. Well, I want to dive into your story. I want to dive into, what you do, what messaging struggles you had and how you overcame them and all that stuff. But can you first just tell the listeners a little bit about what you do?
Yes. So thank you for having me. I'm excited and only slightly nervous to be here. But obviously I know I have nothing to worry about. So what I do is I help people that are in traditional career trajectories that are very unhappy in their professions transition out of their profession by going into online entrepreneurship. So you already know this, Brandon, but my story stems from myself being a very miserable and unhappy lawyer for over 5 years and really going down that traditional path and understanding when I burnt out that it was not what I wanted. So I help people really see what's not working for them, what it is that they really want to create, and help them get that freedom and the lifestyle that they want through entrepreneurship.
I love that. And I just want to ask a couple personal questions about what it is you do, because I'm just kind of curious. When it comes to the people you help, why do you think they're unhappy in a job? Because it sounds like a lot of them are in, making good money, like they're doing the things, like they're in professional jobs. What's causing that unhappiness?
I love this question because it's something that I had to really face for a long time too, because there comes a point where you've got the status and you've got the success and the money and you've checked all the boxes, but you get to the end of this road and you realize, like, I've spent all of this time, energy, money achieving all of this, but I'm just not happy. And you don't know why, because you've basically done everything you were told to do by your parents, by your teachers, by society, right? So, and people that get into these professions oftentimes are high achieving, type A, like they don't want to admit that anything is wrong. In my opinion, what I've seen with myself, what I've seen with clients, what typically happens is as you're going through this entire journey through the societal system, right, of achieving all of this success, nobody really asks you along the way, like, who are you, Nav? What is it that you value? What do you want out of life, right? Like, what kind of lifestyle do you want? Even if you look at children at school, what do we ask them? What do you want to be when you grow up? And what are they basing that on? They're basing that on what they see on TV. They're basing that on what their parents have told them, what teachers have told them that they should be, right? Nobody ever
Right.
asks, what kind of life do you want to have, right? Like what encompasses that level of success? So when you get to this stage and now you've been doing your job for 5 or 10 years, you realize, wait a second, I'm not doing any of the things I wanted to do. I'm spending
Mm.
all of my time, all of my energy giving it to this job, and what am I getting in return besides a paycheck, right? I don't have time to spend with my partner, with my children. I don't have time to work out. I'm too tired. I'm fatigued. It just, you start weighing out what's more important, and you start realizing how little the money actually ends up mattering. Of course we need it to
Right.
sustain ourselves. Of course we get used to a certain lifestyle, and money is important in so many ways, but it's not the only thing. And I think that's why people that earn multiple six figures end up reassessing and saying, am I actually happy?
Mm.
There's that piece that's missing.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important conversation because I'm like, even as you're talking, and giving those examples as a kid, your focus is just on what do you want to be when you grow up, and not how do you want to live or what do you want your life to look like. Such an important question, especially nowadays, because your life could really look like any way you want it to be.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, or not even a kid, as a teenager, my wife's mom, so my mother-in-law, before we had met, would tell her like, you should marry a doctor, you should marry a doctor. Like, we have friends whose husband is a doctor and they
Mm-hmm.
have these nice homes and all of this stuff. And then Jacqueline, when I met her, started working for a doctor, and she started to realize like all of the money and revenue is directly tied to time, and this guy works all the time, and as soon as he stops, then the money stops.
Yeah.
And I look at our life now, and like the last couple of years, I mean, I'm working like maybe 2 to 4, maybe on a bad day, 6 hours a day, and spending most time with my family and that type of stuff, making just as much as a doctor does or more.
Yeah.
And that's a really important question to ask that never gets asked.
Yeah.
So if someone finds themselves in that like position, what is the first step to kind of figuring out what they want to do and making that leap? Because to me, I would assume, and please tell me if I'm wrong, the biggest fear is like, oh my God, I have to start all over again.
Yeah.
I spent my whole life doing this. So what is that first step that people should be taking or looking at?
Yeah, no, there's a few fears that come up. There's definitely the fear of having to start all over. I know people that are absolutely miserable that will confide in me and tell me how much they hate their job, but the fear of starting all over and the fear of being judged and no longer having that status really scares people, you know? The first thing, a lot of people think that they just need to come up with the $1 million idea, right? And like
Right.
that's what's going to help them leave. Once I hit that level, then I'll have the permission to leave. So one of the mistakes people make is thinking that they need to mimic their level of success in their career in a business before they can have the permission to leave. And I say before even getting to all of that, you need to first understand what it is that's not working, which is kind of a backwards way to look at it, but it really helps get clarity. I always say it's the contrast that creates the clarity, right? So
Mm.
understand what it is in this particular lifestyle that you've created that's not working for you. All of the things that you wish you could change if you can sustain the same level of success and income, right? And that's when
Right.
people really start to get the aha moments when they start peeling back and saying, well, it's not working for me that I need to work, it's not even a 9 to 5 for most of these people. Like they're working 8 to 6, 8 to 8, right? They're putting in 12 hours,
Mm.
13 hours, sometimes later. I had a lawyer message me the other day on LinkedIn and he was leaving the office at 1 a.m. And it's
Jeez Louise.
exactly. So, how do you have the capacity to sustain your relationships, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your parents, your siblings, your children? You don't, right? So, it becomes
Right.
very isolating. So, the first thing I say is let's see what's not working. Let's see what idealistically you would want instead. And a lot of these people don't have, they've lost that imagination, the ideology along the way because they're so stuck in the how am I going to make this happen? And
Mhm.
if I can't create a straight line from point A to point B in my mind before I get started, then I can't start, right?
Well, that's so backwards too, because the biggest thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is even if you see it A to B in your head, that's not the way it's going to work out.
Never.
So you figuring out the how literally happens as you're doing it. And that's crazy for most people, but I'm like, that's just the way it works, which is
It's
nuts.
there's so much unlearning that is involved in this entire
Mm,
process, because you got to keep in mind, like, people that follow these trajectories, myself included, you're so used to the rules, you're so used to having like something to follow your entire life. And that's when, like, when you get to the end of the rules and you're like, oh, okay, well, I did everything correctly, you go back and you double check, that you've crossed your t's and dotted your i's, and you realize, like,
right,
wait, why, where's that pot of gold that was promised? Where's that happiness that was promised? Because I'm just miserable. And then
right,
that's when you start noticing the numbing behaviors, right? Like overindulging in shopping, in going out, in drinking, and eating, and worse, right? A lot of these professions have very high rates of substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and a lot of that stuff, because now
right.
you're starting to say, I've got all the money in the world, I've got all the status in the world, but I'm miserable. So how can I fill that gap? It's
Yeah,
sad, you know?
it is, and this is such an important conversation because for me, I really care about the new generation, like the kids that are up and coming. And if we don't change those conversations now, you could potentially be leading your kids into the same trap. And what makes it, in my opinion, even worse is like a lot of the jobs that will be available won't be available. So they could be going down this path of becoming something professional, but like whether it be a lawyer, an accountant, whatever. But some of those jobs may not even be in existence in 20 years
Oh,
or whatever it may
absolutely.
be,
Yeah, the level
which
at
is
which we're seeing things change right now, I think we can't even fathom what we're going to see in the next 10 or 20 years, in terms of these
right.
professions.
Well, think about the last 5 years. And like I always tell people, what I do for a living did not exist 5, 10 years ago.
Hmm.
It just didn't. It didn't exist. And here we are with it existing and growing and evolving. I have one question for you. And I'm also really curious because it sounds like you know your stuff really well. Like I was just asking these questions, and you're like, boom, boom, boom. So I'm really curious to hear where the trouble was with turning it into messaging that people understood and all that stuff. But I do have one more question, which is when you're working with your audience, your peeps, do you find that like the thing they desire the most is to get time back, or is it to be doing something a little bit more purposeful so they don't mind putting the time in? Or is it like a little bit of both?
Yeah. For most people, it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mind. These are the people that have the hustle mentality, like, they're like, I will work my ass off. Oops. I don't know if I can say that, but okay. I will work my ass off to do whatever I need to do to get where I need to be. Like, they have that go, go, go mentality. They are like the top earners of our society. So they're not afraid of putting in the time in order to achieve what they want. It's when they become a slave to their job, when they no longer have
Mm-hmm.
control of their time, that's what becomes an issue, right? Like, I don't get to choose when I work, how I work, whether I want to take a sick day because my kid is sick, or because I'm just not feeling well right now and I, need the morning to myself. There's no
Right.
flexibility. So one of the things is really just being a prisoner to their own success, and that's really hard for them because they're high achieving and they want to have ultimate control. The other thing I hear so much is just that their work is just so mundane. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
became a lawyer so I can help people, I know that sounds super cheesy, but that's what motivated me to first become a lawyer. And I thought I was going to be working for the UN and doing all this humanitarian work, and that's just not how it worked out. And then you get
Right.
into these circles and you realize there's so much bureaucracy. It's so much about filling the pockets of the law firm. It's really not about the person. It's not about that
Right.
connection. So I was craving that, the purpose that you just mentioned, and that deeper
Right.
reason for doing something. And a lot of my people also crave that. Like right
Right.
now, I'm working with a doctor, and she does, amazing work, obviously, as a physician. And she thinks that that's really, really meaningful. But then her passion is to be an artist. And
Mm.
she's been trying to find the meaning in art. And now it's been, her world has opened up as she's realizing, when people come to her and they appreciate her art so much, and they talk about how much it changed their life in a time where they needed something the most, like they needed to look forward to something positive when something really negative was happening. And her art allows people to have those feelings. And now she's seeing that she can make an impact through art as she could as a doctor, which is such a different world,
Beautiful.
you know?
Yeah.
It's
Well, such
amazing.
a different outlet too. It's like, she's obviously driven by helping people, and it's just a completely different outlet that probably suits who she is now today a little bit better, and that's
Yeah.
just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I want to move the conversation to messaging and what your experience has been like, because it's very clear that you obviously love what you do, you're good at it, you understand it. But what were some of the issues that you were having? And because this is where most people are. Most people are very good at something. Like they have a skill, they know they want to help people, but they put out content and it's just like crickets, or no one seems to really notice. So what was your experience like? What were some of the problems that you had translating knowledge to messaging and pulling people in and creating demand?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. How much time do we have to talk about all my problems?
We got all day, all day.
Oh my goodness. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said most people are good at something or they're passionate about something, which is what I was coming
Mm,
from. I was like, I know I can help people because I've felt this so deeply myself that I know how to help people through this whole process.
mhm.
My problems were that I had no idea how to communicate that in a way where the person understood it, where I was meeting them where they are now. I wasn't doing that. I was meeting them 10 steps ahead. I was speaking to them from, present time Nav, and forgetting that Nav a couple of years ago was having completely different thoughts and completely different struggles and would not
Mhm.
resonate with this. So there was this disconnect. And that's the first thing that I can acknowledge. Number two, I think I was basically just like throwing spaghetti at the walls. Like I would just be inspired by something and just want to go and make a piece of content, and then something would hit because it'd be good, and then 10 things wouldn't hit and I had no idea why. And then the
Right.
frustration that comes with that, and like what you make it mean about yourself, and I must not know what I'm talking about, or this must not be good, or nobody wants it. If one
Right.
post doesn't do well, that must mean that you should just trash your whole business. So it was really struggling to, I think, understand what, like, really take a step back and say, what am I doing here? What am I helping people with? And how do I communicate that in a way where they can relate to it, where they can actually come and connect to what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of like where you were at and then now meeting them where they're at? Because I know some people will be kind of going like, well, I understand the concept, but I don't really see how it all kind of fits together. So what would be like an example of that?
Like before, I would use very vague terminology and I'd say things like, you're really frustrated at work because you don't like what you do and you wish that you can have more freedom, but you don't know how, So it was, that's not untrue. That's all very true. But what I learned, obviously going through the whole process with you and many hot seats later,
Just as you're talking right now, I'm like already wanting to correct it. I'm like, no, you gotta say,
you're like cringing, like stop it now.
yeah,
But I realized, there's certain exercises that you have us do, and you really do like to challenge people, which I love about you. I think you really are, you help us step up. And which is
yeah,
what you helped with me, is that yes, that's what they're going through. Yes. Like I was trying to meet them where they were, but I didn't realize that it wasn't descriptive. They weren't connecting with it because I wasn't adding anything that invoked emotion for them, right?
right.
But when I can say things like you're waking up and snoozing your alarm for the first time because you don't want to go face that huge pile of files on your desk that just keeps growing every single day, and no matter how hard you work and how many hours you put in, 13 hours later in that day a pile is actually bigger than smaller, like when I'm saying
Oh my
something.
gosh, it makes me so happy to hear you say that, because you're saying it like, yes, yes, that's so specific. That's exactly what they're dealing with. That's a perfect example.
Exactly.
I
So
love
like when I can say something like that, it really is just, it's not hard because all I have to do is just tune into what I was going through. All I have to do is close
Right.
my eyes and imagine what it felt like, what I saw, what I heard, all of that, and talk to them at that level because that's where they are today. So I think that would be the difference in being able to communicate to people how like how they need. And it's kind of doing a disservice to your audience if you can't do that, because
Right.
it's our job to help them through this problem. And if I'm getting stuck before I even get started and I'm not even able to communicate to them, then how am I going to help them get rid of this pain.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things we talk about too all the time is like they need to know and automatically feel that you understand them and their situation. And the more that you demonstrate that you understand their specific situation more than everyone else, the more trust they have in your ability to fix it and to solve it. And I love what you said because you gave the example of what you were doing and you mentioned, which is all true. Like that is true, but it wasn't said in the way that gets them to automatically go, I trust this person gets me, this person understands
Yeah.
me. And I think it's what most people talk about is they talk in generalizations or they say words like you're stressed out, overwhelmed. It's like every human on this planet is going to experience
Yeah.
overwhelm and being stressed from time to time. So that doesn't really help you in any way.
Yeah.
And I also know that a lot of people, let me know if you were doing this, maybe you weren't, but a lot of people will start to get into the solution really quick where it's just kind of like, hey, you're stuck in a job. It's because you have a limiting belief around what is possible for you. And they're like, look, I don't want to talk about limiting beliefs right now. Just give me the first step of like being less stressed before I take on this thing.
Oh my
Right.
God, yes. I completely resonate with that, especially what you said about limiting beliefs, because when you're in this position where you're a coach or a consultant, mentor, whatever you want to call it, you know that the solution is something that might be internal first, right? There's these internal shifts
Mhm.
before you get the external results, and we want to help them right there. We're like, I know what you're struggling with. I figured it out. It's internal. Let's change your limiting beliefs. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't give a crap about that. I can't do that right now. Like, I've got a pile of shit on my desk that I need to take care of. Like, Nav, go away. But if somebody comes in there and says, I see
Right.
this pile on your desk, I see that you missed another dinner with your kids and now they've gone to sleep without saying goodnight to you one more time. If I can say that to them, then they'll know I understand them. And it's not about the limiting belief yet. We'll get there when we get there, but that's not the communication. And I was doing that. Like, I'm totally guilty of speaking to the solution that I know that they need. And a lot of times they just need to hear that you get them. They just need to connect with you, and they're not there yet. They're not ready for the whole mountain of solutions I'm going to give them. All I need to tell them is that there's a better way and they can have the life
Yeah.
that they want.
I love that. As you were talking, I kept thinking of this example of, like if you're in a fight with your spouse or something like that, and they're kind of like angry, and you just tell them, Just calm down, just calm down." It's like that's the worst thing you can do because their nervous system is all over the place. They're
Yeah.
in emotions, and that's you have to understand that's where your audience is at. Like they're experiencing a problem. They may be in flight or flight. They may be stressed out. They're all over the place. So when we get in that spot, like our logical, rational thinking tends to go a little bit out the window.
Yeah.
And when you understand that that's the place emotionally where your audience is at, and you can adjust your communication to meet them there emotionally first and be like, I understand you and your situation, their emotions actually come down to a more calm state. And then you can have that conversation, much like you would with a spouse or a friend or anyone else.
Right.
It's the same thing, but we don't carry that over to our messaging and our content a lot of the times,
Yeah.
and people just like start blasting you with like, here's the real deep issue, and it's like, I'm not even at that place yet.
Exactly.
You lost.
And just like before, it's not untrue. It's true, right? Like,
Um,
even in your spouse example, yes, the person probably needs to calm down before you can move forward. But
right.
even when you're saying like, hey, it's a limiting belief that you have, or you're stuck internally, or it's your subconscious mind that's keeping you there, it's not untrue. Like, I'm not saying that anybody is faking it in their messaging. It's just that we're not realizing that the audience isn't there yet. They're not ready for that level. We need to meet them at level one. We need to build that
Right.
trust. We need to see them and then, kind of move them along to the next level with us. And I know, you teach a lot of beautiful ways to do this through, different patterns and different frameworks and things like that, and examples that you
Mhm.
give. But a lot of us, the old me, we weren't doing that before. And
Right.
not for lack of trying. You feel like you are. You feel like, oh, I am trying
Mhm.
to meet them where they are. I am trying to tell them what the problem is. But we just need to remember that when somebody is in their problem, it's the biggest thing in their life right now. It's so all all encompassing, consuming, that they can't think of anything else right now. All they want
Right.
is to be relieved of this issue.
Right. And if you can demonstrate you understand that and start giving them the baby steps to do it, it's huge for them.
Yeah.
And I love what you said. We'll move on to the next phase of this too. But before we do, I just wanted to highlight one thing that you said, which is like, look, everything that you're saying that's not connecting is true. And also at the same point, you're also very skilled and knowledgeable at what you do. And so when you try to put that out there and you're saying true things and you're giving away your knowledge and things that you know will be helpful, and no one's listening, it is one of the most infuriating, frustrating experiences, in my opinion, that an online course creator or online entrepreneur can really have. And I think what you're tapping into is that knowing what to say isn't always going to be the best thing. And it isn't always going to be the key to success. And what most people don't take into consideration, and if you're listening right now, I'm willing to bet if you're an unheard entrepreneur, what you haven't done is you haven't taken into consideration, how do I communicate this? And there's two different pieces. We need to know what to say, but if we're not taking into consideration how we're saying it, then it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And that's the biggest issue I think that most people face. And it kind of sounds like that's what you were dealing with too, right before you came into the program.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next question, which is what led you to the program? Like, was it just, you just had enough of the messaging issues, or what was the final straw for you?
Yeah. So it was me doing everything I thought was correct. And I just kept going and going and going, right? One thing after another, I was trying, and I've been in programs, I've, invested in the gurus and all of that stuff. But what I was noticing was that every single program or mentor was giving me kind of like steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but not 1 to 3. Like I wasn't getting the basics, I wasn't getting the foundations. And I think a lot of people don't realize that messaging is the core of your business. It is everything. It's how you communicate. It's how people see you. It's how you're going to be able to help others, right? So I was trying, like I said, it wasn't for lack of trying, but I wasn't getting specific. I really wasn't attracting people. And that's when I realized I think it's the way I'm communicating. It's because I know that there's something here that can help people. And people were coming up to me all the time and saying, Nav, this is so amazing that you're doing this. I wish I had somebody like this when I left my career. I wish I had somebody helping me with XYZ. I interviewed like 20 people that have both already left 6-figure careers and the people that are on the cusp of leaving, really to understand what it was that was missing, because I knew that there was a gap there. So I knew what I was doing was good. I knew that it was going to help people. I was already helping people, but not enough people. So that's when
Right.
I understood that it has to be the way I'm communicating. And there you were, Brandon.
It just appeared. I can sense it. I can sense when people need help with messaging.
Just
Well, no, what you're talking about is really important, because I think a lot of people are convinced or told or indoctrinated into this idea that it's strategy. It's like
yes.
strategy is going to be the key to whatever. It's your strategy. It's the way you're posting. You're not posting enough, or you need
Or
to do
this
webinars.
day or that day. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, and for all you listeners, like, I'm willing to bet that you have all seen people become successful a million different ways. Some with challenges, some with video series, some with webinars, some with the DM strategy, some with evergreen, some with launches. And it doesn't matter if you post on Thursday, Fridays, whatever, one time a week. I've seen people be successful with all of it. And what you have to realize is it's not what they're doing per se, although there's certain strategies that can get you and yield you better results, but it's more what you're saying inside of a strategy. And sometimes changing a strategy isn't what's going to bring the results. It's what you say inside of that strategy. It's your communication. Because again, I can give 5 different people the same training and then tell them to go do a webinar like on strategy. Here's the strategy, go and sell this product, and they're all going to get different results.
Yeah.
Why is that? If they're following the same steps, well, it's because of what they're doing and how they're saying it. That's the biggest difference. And it sounds like that was a great lesson for you to learn, or realization to
Yeah.
have, because it kind of led you to focusing on like, how do we say things? How do we communicate?
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you when you finally came into the program?
I think for me, it was really eye opening because I realized that I was making it more complicated than it needed to be. And not only that, I think I was just, you basically take everything you know and you just throw it out there, right? So, like, there was really not a lot of cohesiveness, I guess, when it came to the actual message. I was saying so many things in different ways. It was
Mm.
all in one umbrella, but it wasn't making enough sense. I can tell to my audience, obviously. So coming into the program, I think was helped me break things down in a really succinct way. Help me understand. First of all, there's different types of communication. There's different ways to communicate, and when you break it down for us, it makes total sense. But I wasn't doing that on my own. I was just making posts in my own conversational tone, like how I would speak, because that when I speak to people, it resonates. So I was like, why would I change that? But I didn't realize there's so much more psychology behind it. There's so much more behavioral like understanding behind it. And I think that's what something that you help us break down with your frameworks that really helped.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this whole experience is the way you help us break down a methodology. Like, yes, you can help people. Yes, we all know how to help somebody. That's why we're in this profession. But to be able to articulate that in such a simple way and to know that that's all connected, not only to like the solution and how I'm helping people, but also helps me communicate easier. Like it was just like, poof, that was probably the biggest thing. It sounds simple, but just the way I think you've helped us bring that together and make it your own, it really helps you understand that, okay, there is no other Navneet that can do this thing that I'm doing. No matter what experience they've had, you can find an ex-lawyer out there. Nobody is doing what I'm doing the way I'm doing it. It's that uniqueness.
Right.
And that helps me be more confident about my
Yeah.
message.
Yeah. And confident and also clear because once we understand the methodology, it's like, cool, this is what makes me unique. This is my process. But then we have a North Star to start pulling content and topics and things from. And then we know that everything's going to point back to the method. And what I personally love the most about the method and having a methodology is that it also becomes what you sell.
Yeah.
So instead of people saying like, oh, I want to come to this person because they're an Instagram expert or an entrepreneur expert. It's like, I'm coming to this person because they have some intellectual property. They have a process that only they have that's going to help me do X, Y, and Z. And when we can do that, again, we become unique, but it's a great way to position our offer because now they're coming to us because of our IP. Well, guess what do we sell on our side of our program? Our IP.
Yeah.
So once we have this, people are always like, well, how do I create my offer and create demand for my offer? It's like, you don't. You create demand for an IP or a process that you have. And the only way to access that is in your offer. And so it's a great way to create demand inside of your content, your ecosystem. And when this is happening, you start getting DMs from people asking, how do I work with you? Which sounds like you're getting, right? People on LinkedIn, you said you had someone the other day just messaging you out of the blue. And it's a beautiful thing when you have that going on because you're like, great, I understand what I do, how I help people. They're getting it and they're coming to me now versus me frantically trying desperately to pull people in, which is where I think most people are.
Yeah, no,
That
I think you're absolutely right about that. It's the more you can, it goes back to describing and understanding who they are. But then now, as we're talking about the methodology, it's about giving them that solution. It's about saying, I know how to help you, and this is my system. I've got something that works, that's been proven, that can help you. And you're right. I've got people reaching out to me. Like it's not me going out there and trying to solicit them. Like people will, when you write, sometimes my CTA is just DM me the word freedom and we'll chat.
right.
It blows my mind that people will actually do that. They'll go out of their way to DM me and they'll say that because they want to have this conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
like multiple people will reach out to me. And I think it's because not only do I understand what they're going through now, but I can show them how to get out of this. I can show them how to make the changes that they desire so deeply.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, to boil it down very simply, it's like you've identified a real actual problem and you've communicated that you understand that real actual problem. And I think it's another issue too that some people run into is that they just pick problems that people aren't really wanting to get fixed. I've seen that sometimes too, is like people focus so much on here's what I do and here's what I do and here's my skills. And then I say, great, what problem does that solve? And they're like, oh, it's this problem, but no one's paying for it. And it's like, yeah, because they would rather keep their money than have that problem solved. You haven't picked a bad enough problem
Yeah.
that someone is willing to pay for. And I always, this is a little extreme, but like, if your child gets sick and it's going to cost $50,000 to get them treated and healed, otherwise they're going to die, and you don't have the $50,000, guess what? You're going to find a way to pay that $50,000 because that is a big, serious problem.
Yeah.
And so there's two sides of the equation here is, yes, we need to demonstrate what it is we do and that we understand them and their problem, but we also have to pick a great problem in the first place because it just becomes so much easier.
And
As
that's
well.
like a conversation that I've been having recently, both with like people that I'm working with, but also like my own peers, is like this whole thing about the problem. And I think there's an opportunity here for you, Brandon, to go even deeper with this whole problem situation and training. Because, even on our calls, sometimes that's where people are getting stumped. And I was stumped there for a long time. So it's being able to choose and articulate the problem that you solve in a really, really clear way is gold. Like that's what really, really separates people, I think, in the online space, is because it's showing you both things. It's showing you that this person understands me, they know where I'm at, but they can also help me.
Yeah.
So that to me is one of the most important things that I think, even in more recent times, that I've been refining and working on, is getting, because you come up with a problem and it's good, but then as you work with people, as you talk to people, I start realizing actually this person's problem is more specific, right? Like I used to
Right.
think they're just miserable in their job, but their problem is the fact that they don't actually know what they would do if they left their job, and the fear is so crippling of making that leap. So it's getting deeper and deeper and deeper in every stage, and then that's just helping with your specificity. It's helping you connect with people more.
Yeah, and it's such a great point because I noticed what you didn't say in that is like I changed my offer, I changed what I did, I changed my process, which is where I think a lot of people go.
Yeah.
And I always love the example. I know you've probably heard me say this a million times, but the whole example with the Thigh Master, where the Thigh Master was originally designed as a physical therapy tool, solving a problem of I forget where, some like physical therapy muscle issue or whatever, and it didn't really sell that well. So the guy who invented the pet rock ended up buying it and he turned it into the Thigh Master, which was solving a completely different problem.
Yeah.
It was the same tool, same offer, same product, but they chose a different problem that product solved, and it sold hundreds of millions of dollars. And I love that's what you're hinting at right now is like, you didn't change your program. You didn't change your philosophy. You didn't change your methodology. The biggest change that you made was the problem it was solving and how you communicated the problem that was solving. And then it starts to change the results.
Absolutely.
Which leads me to, how have your results been since being in the program?
So I think I've been in the program for a year now because I was in before X, which actually coincides with me leaving law a year ago, which is crazy. So
Oh, it's
I
amazing.
know it's really interesting. So this is my first, I guess, full year in my business, and I have already three times my income now, like compared to last year, what I had made in my business.
That's amazing.
I know.
And mostly because of the messaging and
Oh,
getting clear and stuff.
I'm not just saying this to like make your head blow up, but yes,
Sure.
definitely, because I was trying things that were not clear before. And like you just pointed out, I didn't change my offer. I didn't change who I was working with. I didn't change
Right.
any of that. All I changed was how I was communicating it. And that was about January when I really started to get into things, and kind of shift things around and test different things. And that's when the people started knocking on my door. Like I didn't have to go and reach out. So it does blow my mind to reflect on that. It's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing.
And for the listeners, I want you guys to think about for a second, like when you have people DMing you, asking to work with you and asking to buy, how much more effective and bigger do you think your launches are going to go and your funnels are going to be? Because that's just an indicator for me. Like when people start DMing me, I'm like, okay, whatever I'm saying is resonating. Now let's go do the same thing and let's launch this thing, and it's going to be, the results are going to be even bigger.
Yeah.
So Awesome. Well, are there any last things, like if someone was on the fence, what are some words of advice that you would give them?
Do it. Save yourself time, save yourself a headache, and jump off the fence. I think the amount of care and support that you offer and your team offers, Brandon, is like honestly unparalleled. I've never seen that level of care and personalization in a group that you offer. And this community is just amazing. I've connected with multiple people in this circle and community who are my dear friends now. So there's a lot of support. There's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes, to learn, to tweak, and to really succeed. So do it.
Yeah. I mean, we do. We have, I mean, we literally have people on our team whose job is literally just the care for the students. Like that is their 100% full-time job, is just to make sure that they're getting the support they need, they're getting all the resources they need, questions are getting answered, coaches are showing up, coaches calls are getting, like everything just for the students. And so,
And it's felt like it definitely is understood and felt, I think, from a student perspective. So that's amazing.
Awesome. Well, now thank you so much for being here. If people want to learn more about you, maybe there's someone listening who is stuck in a career and they're like, okay, I really need her help. Like, where can they go to learn more about you?
Yep. So they can catch me on my social media on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I can give you my handles if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So LinkedIn is just Navneet Mann and Instagram is Navneet Mann _. Or go to my website, navneetmann.com, and you'll find all my contact information there.
Okay. And do you want to spell that real quick? Just
Yes.
so everyone.
So my name, it's my first and last name, NavneetMann.com. And yeah, I'll send you the handles if you want to link them in the show notes as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. And for all you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. Hopefully this brought you some perspective on how you can shift your messaging. And if you are on the fence, hopefully it brought a little bit more clarity if this is a right fit for you or not. And yeah, thank you guys for all listening. If you guys have not left us a review on iTunes, I'd be so grateful for that. If you just want to head over to iTunes and just leave us a positive review. If you want to leave us a negative review, just don't do it. Go somewhere else. Go to like Jim Fortin's podcast, leave it there. We don't want it here, but you can just leave us a nice review. That would be amazing. And I appreciate you. And I'm so grateful for all you listeners out there. So thank you guys. Take care. We'll see you guys on the next one. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.